You are the ship. That's not metaphor. Not yet. It starts simple. A story from ancient Greece. A thought experiment. Old and rotting, yet strangely preserved. The ship of Theseus. You've heard of it, maybe not like this. A ship sets sail, and over time, piece by piece, plank by plank, the ship is repaired, replaced, maintained. Eventually, not a single original board remains, but it still floats. It still sails. It still carries the name. So the question, is it still the same ship? You think that's abstract. You're wrong, because you're doing it too. Every 7 years, almost every cell in your body is replaced. The atoms you call self are borrowed from the air, the food, the water, the endless dead things consumed. You are no more original than a tide, yet you walk confident, as if the you from yesterday is still somewhere behind the eyes. But what is continuity if not a lie we tell ourselves to keep moving? And the problem deepens. What if someone took those old boards, the ones removed from the ship, and rebuilt it in a different harbor? Now there are 2 ships. Which one is Theseus? Which one are you? If your memories could be downloaded, copied, installed on a synthetic brain, and your body replaced with exact prosthetics, is that you? And if not, why are you still pretending to be the same person you were before heartbreak, before war, before sleep? You remember something, so you think that means it's you. But memory is notoriously corrupt. In one experiment, Loftus, 1974, researchers implanted false memories into participants' minds just by using language. A simple change of phrasing. Did you see a broken headlight? Versus, did you see the broken headlight? The brain rewrote history to fit the story. So what's to stop your brain from doing that every time you recall yourself? And then, there's the split-brain patient. Michael Gazzaniga severed the corpus callosum, the bridge between brain hemispheres, to treat epilepsy. Afterward, he discovered something terrifying. The 2 hemispheres behaved like 2 separate consciousnesses. One hand buttoned the shirt, the other unbuttoned it. One half of the brain could see the world and act, but not speak. The other could speak, but not see, so the speaking half made up stories to explain the unseen half's behavior, with total confidence lies, glorious, immediate lies, not out of malice, but necessity, because the self cannot admit it doesn't. No, so it invents. So what are you? A collection of half-formed interpretations, stitched together by language, rewritten every time you recall them. When you say I, who are you referring to? Is it the one who wants, the one who watches, the one who acts, the one who speaks? And if each one tells a different story, which one is lying? Or are they all lying? Thomas Metzinger, philosopher of mind, insists, there is no self, no one behind the eyes, just a user interface. A virtual avatar constructed by evolution to simulate control. Like a mouse pointer on a screen, useful, not real. So when you close your eyes, what remains? If the self is a simulation, and your memories are corrupted, and your atoms are replaced, and your brain is fragmented, and your sense of continuity is a trick, then what exactly are you falling asleep as? Who's dreaming when you dream? And when you wake up, who decides it was you who slept? Or worse, what if no one did? What if there was never a you at all, only the ship, forever floating, boards falling away, and no captain? So tell me, if you are not the ship, who is? There's a room that makes people go mad, not metaphorically, not philosophically, clinically, physically. You can visit it, it exists. the Orfield Anechoic Chamber in Minnesota. It's one of the quietest places on Earth, so quiet it registers at -9 decibels, negative sound, silence deeper than silence. The walls eat echoes, the floor floats, the ceiling swallows, and in that stillness your body revolts. People begin to hear the sound of their blood, the rhythmic squelch of eyeballs shifting, the crackling of their joints, digestion, heartbeat. You were never meant to hear the mechanisms that keep you alive, but in the absence of the world, the body turns inwards. You become the noise. Most visitors can't last more than 20 minutes. They panic, they hallucinate, they beg to leave. You think you want silence, but what you crave is the illusion of silence, a layer of ambient sound to muffle the machine. In silence, your sense of self distorts, direction disappears, balance fails. The mind, without reference, begins inventing reference points, voices, movement, presences. This is what solitude really is. Not peaceful, not contemplative, but deprivation. And yet you are already alone. When you close your eyes at night, you are the only observer inside your skull, locked in a 3-pound vault of neural tissue, wet with chemicals and whispers of electrical discharge. You have never touched the world. Not directly, not once. Touch is an illusion. You feel pressure. Your atoms repel the atoms of the object. They never meet. Sight. Your retina receives photons, ancient ghosts that bounced off something else. By the time you see a star, it might be dead. Sound. Molecules of air jostle and shudder, meaningless until translated by meat, taste, smell, pain. All simulations, all processed hallucinations produced by a body that can't be trusted. Even your thoughts are delayed. By the time you're aware of them, the electrical signal has already occurred. Benjamin Libet's experiments in the 1980s showed that readiness, potentials fire in the brain before a person becomes consciously aware of their decision. Milliseconds, but measurable. Your choice was made before you thought you made it. And so, what exactly is free will? If your body chooses before you do, and your mind fabricates a narrative to explain it, then who are you really? A narrator, a puppet, a bystander. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." But if the thinking comes first, and the I follows like a PR agent scrambling for a headline, then isn't that backwards? Shouldn't it be, there is thought? And sometimes you are allowed to watch. Your brain contains 86 billion neurons. It has no pain receptors. You could be awake during surgery. And what would that prove? Only this, that the thing you identify with, this voice, this you, is nothing but signal, a pattern that floats in a vat of sensory noise. And when the signals go quiet, the self fades. Just like in the anechoic chamber, silence reveals the lie. The silence inside the room is the silence you carry with you. All the time you speak to others, but no one hears you the way you hear yourself. Not exactly, not ever, in psychology. This is called the illusion of transparency, the belief that others can see into your emotions more clearly than they can. They can't, they don't. You are broadcasting from a station no one tunes into. Your words are echoes, and the quieter you become, the louder you are to yourself. Which brings us back to the chamber, back to the hallucinations, back to the voices conjured by your own skull when the world fades away, and the body becomes the loudest thing in the universe. You realize something. You've never actually left the room. The room is your mind. The walls are your senses. The silence, Is yourself unmasked? So I ask you, if the silence gets louder, the deeper you go, where exactly does it end? There's a mirror in front of you. You look into it and call that recognition. You call that you. But how do you know? You've never seen your own face. Not directly, only in mirrors. Reflections, photos, shadows, everything you believe about. Your appearance comes second-hand, filtered, reversed, flattened, and yet you build a self-image on top of that scaffolding. Your self-esteem, your shame, your pride, balanced on a version of you that you've never once truly encountered. But let's make it worse. You stand in front of that mirror. You stare into your own eyes. Do you see agency, awareness, or just the illusion of symmetry? Now imagine this. A chimpanzee is placed in front of a mirror. At first, it panics. Then it investigates. Eventually, it recognizes that the reflection moves when it moves. Scientists call this the mirror test, a benchmark of self-awareness. Children usually pass it around. 18 months old. Dogs don't. Elephants sometimes do. Magpies, too. But here's the question. What does the mirror test actually prove? That the animal knows what it looks like? Or just that it notices the connection between movement and reflection? When you see yourself in the mirror, is that self-awareness? Or just pattern recognition? And what happens when the pattern breaks? Capgras delusion, a rare but real psychiatric disorder. A person sees a loved one, their spouse, their parent, and becomes convinced they've been replaced by an imposter. The face looks identical, but the emotional recognition is gone. Something doesn't click, so the brain rewrites the story. This is not my husband. This is not my mother. This is someone wearing their skin. Now flip it. You look in the mirror. Your face is there. But one day, without warning, it doesn't feel like yours anymore. That's depersonalization disorder. You detach, emotionally, mentally. You float behind your body. Watch it perform. You feel like a ghost piloting a puppet. Up to 75% of people experience this at least once in their lives. It's not rare, it's just hidden. You could be disassociating now and not even realize it. The disassociation itself is recursive, and so the self fractures. But the brain continues the charade because someone has to perform. You pretending to be you, to preserve the fragile illusion that there is a you. That's the narrative self. A story you tell yourself, to yourself, about yourself. In 2007, neuroscientist Anil Seth described consciousness not as something you have, but as something your brain guesses constantly, a controlled hallucination. Best fit predictions stitched together from partial inputs. If the guess holds, you call it reality. If it breaks, you call it madness. So you look in the mirror, you see the face, and you think, that's me. But what if that thought is just another guess? A guess piled on top of other guesses. A recursive avalanche of identity, each layer more fabricated than the last. Like a dream where you dream that you're dreaming. A self that imagines a self that imagines a self. So who's doing the imagining? And what happens when the dream wakes up, but you don't? You say I, but there's no anchor. You look, but there's no seer. You mirror, but there's no reflection. Only data, only noise. Only the machinery of a system programmed to not ask questions like this. And yet here, you are, still asking, still watching, still hoping that when you wake tomorrow, the face in the mirror will blink back with something familiar. But what if it doesn't? What if one day The mirror shows you something that moves just a half second too late. What if the reflection hesitates? What if it smiles before you do? In 1961, a man in a lab coat told another man to push a button. The button delivered electric shocks. The person receiving the shocks was in another room. He screamed, he begged, he fell silent, and the man in the lab coat said, "Please continue." The person pressing the button hesitated, sweated, laughed nervously, asked, "Is he okay?" The man in the coat said, "The experiment requires that you continue." And so he did. This was the Milgram experiment, designed to test obedience to authority. 0.65% of participants delivered what they believed were fatal shocks. They weren't. The screams were recordings. But the subjects believed them. They believed they had killed a stranger, and they did it because someone with a clipboard told them to. That's all it took. A voice, a uniform, a setting that looked like science. So what does this say about you? That your morality is paper-thin? That you'll kill if the room looks official enough? No, it says something worse. It says your conscience is not fixed. It's not even internal. It's outsourced. To the context, to the moment, to whatever you decide is the system. But then what is morality? A trait, a compass, or just a shifting narrative that aligns with survival? Consider Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment. Volunteers split into guards and prisoners, just for 2 weeks. But within days, the guards became cruel, invented punishments, humiliated their friends. The experiment was stopped. Early, Zimbardo later claimed it wasn't a flaw in the people. It was the roles. The context made the monster. You think you know what you'd do in those scenarios. You think you'd refuse. You'd walk away. You'd say no. But that's just another story the mind tells to keep itself from shattering. Every villain thinks they're the hero, and every silence you've kept, every truth you've swallowed to fit in was a rehearsal. So let's take it further. Let's go to quantum mechanics, the double-slit experiment. A beam of particles is fired at a barrier with 2 slits. If unobserved, the particles behave like waves, forming an interference pattern. But the moment you measure, the instant you watch, they act like particles, and the pattern collapses. The act of observation changes the outcome. Why no one knows? Some say the measurement disturbs the system. Some say the universe branches, each outcome unfolding in a separate timeline. You don't get one reality. You get all of them, but you only remember the one you're in. So when you made that decision, the one you regret, perhaps, another version of you chose differently, and now you're stuck with the version that failed. But what is a failure? When reality itself is fractured. You punish yourself, but which self? The one who pressed the button, the one who refused, or the one who simply stood in the room and watched? There's a theory in physics, the many worlds interpretation. It suggests that with every quantum event, the universe splits, infinitely, forever. So right now, there exists another version of you who closed this video, who never heard these words, who never questioned, and another version who questioned so hard they disappeared entirely. So, then tell me, if every version of you exists, ... why are you the one who ended up here? A map is not the territory. You've heard that before, but you haven't felt it. Not yet. A map is a reduction, a compression, a set of symbolic approximations. It removes the irrelevant, it distills the chaos, and that's what makes it useful. But what if the map is too accurate. In 1945, philosopher Jorge Luis Borges wrote of a kingdom where the cartographers made a map so exact it covered the territory in 1-to-1 scale. Every house, every tree, every breath, and in the end, the map became useless. It was too real. It was the world, so they abandoned it. Let it decay. It shredded like a molting skin. That's not just a story. It's a blueprint of your mind. Because your brain is ACARTOGRAPHER. It builds models of the world, of people, of yourself. It's never complete, never raw, never unfiltered. It gives you the illusion of a world, because the real world is far too much. So you carry around a model of you, your desires, your traits, your limits, and you treat that as if it's real. But it's just a map, and now it's out of date. Psychologists call it self-schema, a cognitive framework you build to interpret your identity. You say, I'm not good at math, or I always sabotage relationships, not because it's objectively true, but because your model told you that once, and you never updated the data. You stopped checking the terrain, so your map is warped. But here's the twist. You only exist on the map. You are not the terrain. You don't experience yourself directly. You interpret yourself like a memory of a dream that never happened. And it gets worse. Your self-schema isn't isolated. It's fed by cultural maps, societal definitions, archetypes and scripts written before you were born. You're not just using a broken map. You're using someone else's. This is what sociologist Irving Goffman called the presentation of self. Every interaction is a performance, a role, front stage, backstage, masks layered over masks. And the longer you perform, the harder it is to remember what the original face looked like, if it ever existed. You construct yourself in others' expectations. You are the gap between how you're seen and how you hope to be seen, and when no one's watching, you don't know who you are, because there is no self to return to, only the echo of performance. Your internal monologue, that voice narrating right now, it's just another map. It's not the thing. It's not you. There is no you beneath it. Only signal, only noise, only compression. So you try to improve. You chase self-knowledge. You meditate, reflect, analyze. But even introspection is recursive. You're not accessing your true self. You're just building another layer of the map, another guess, another hallucination about what it means to be you, and just. Like the cartographers, the more accurate you try to make the model, the more it collapses under its own weight. So you simplify. You lie to yourself. You say, I am this, so you don't have to ask, what am I? But deep down, you know the truth. You are the hole in the map. You are the part that can't be represented, the blind spot, the glitch in the interface. Because every time you try to pin yourself down, you slip between your own fingers. You aren't where you think you are. You aren't who you think you are. You aren't. And still, you keep updating the map, hoping that if you get it just right, you'll finally feel real. But tell me, if the map is the only thing you've ever known, how would you even recognize the real terrain if it killed you? You think time moves forward. You believe in clocks. You set alarms. You regret the past, you fear the future, and you never question the direction. But the arrow of time is not a rule, it's a preference. Entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, says that systems tend toward disorder. That's it. That's why eggs don't uncrack, why smoke doesn't re-enter the cigarette, why you age, why you rot, why you die. But physics itself is time-symmetric. The equations don't care which way time flows. They work in both directions. So why don't you? Why do you remember the past, but not the future? Why do you feel like you're moving, when every frame of your life already exists in a frozen slab of space-time? This is block universe theory. Time doesn't pass. It just is. Every moment, past, present, future, coexists. You don't move through time. You are fixed in a four-dimensional block. You're not traveling. You're already there, all of it, forever. But your consciousness experiences it sequentially, like a needle passing over a record. So you think there's motion. You think there's change. You think there's progress. But that's just the shape of your awareness, not reality. And even that awareness might be fake. In 2002, Libet's experiments, yes, again, showed that your brain initiates decisions before you become aware of them. Again and again. The pattern appears. The moment you think is now has already happened. You are perpetually late to your own life. And then there's the grandfather paradox. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather before he reproduces, you erase yourself, which means you couldn't go back, which means he lives, which means you exist, which means you go back and kill him. Loop. Contradiction. Collapse. So physicists try to fix it with closed time-like curves. They say, maybe you can go back, but you can't change anything. Maybe the universe self-corrects, like a rubber band snapping back. Maybe every attempt to alter the past is already part of the timeline. Maybe you were always meant to fail, so, when you sit at night, replaying the worst things you've done, wondering what would have happened if you just said the right word, made the right choice, maybe you couldn't. Maybe you were never capable of doing anything else. You were bound to the line, looped in the groove. This brings us to the eternal return, Nietzsche's thought experiment. Imagine living your exact life, again and again, forever. Every failure, every humiliation, every breath you take in this exact moment, repeated. Endlessly would you scream? Would you kneel? Would you call it a curse? Or would you pretend it's noble just to cope? In 2014, physicists suggested that the universe may be cyclical. The Big Bang isn't the beginning. It's a rebound, a bounce from a previous contraction, an eternal oscillation, like breath. In, out, expand, collapse. Live, die, again. And again, and again. You've done this before. You will do it again. You're not on a line. You're in a circle. But even the circle is an illusion, because quantum physics suggests that time may emerge from entanglement, that before observation there is no past or future, no order, no clock, only potential, only silence. So what is? Memory? A file, a photograph, or just the pattern your brain recycles to pretend that things happened in a sequence? And if time is fake, and choice is delayed, and the future already exists, then why are you pretending you still have time? Why do you act as though tomorrow hasn't happened yet? Why do you sleep, knowing full well it's already over? So tell me, if time never moves, why are you still running? In 1979, philosopher Derek Parfit posed a question so sharp it sliced the concept of self into shreds. Imagine this. You step into a teleportation machine. It scans your body down to the atom, disassembles you, destroys you, and transmits the exact blueprint to a machine on Mars. There you're rebuilt. Same thoughts, same memories, same scars, The body on Earth is gone. The body on Mars opens its eyes. Is that you? Most people say yes. Some say no. But now imagine this. The machine malfunctions. It doesn't destroy the original. Now there are two of you. Identical, simultaneous. Which one is you? You can't both. B. That violates your entire sense of selfhood. But you can't pick either one. They're the same. This is the Parfit paradox. And it's not science fiction. It's a scalpel under your skin. Because what it reveals is this. Personal identity is not what you think it is. You believe you are a single, continuous thread. But threads can fray. They can split. They can duplicate. And if identity can be copied, then it was never unique to begin with. Parfit argued that what matters isn't identity, it's psychological continuity, memories, intentions, traits. But memories fade. Intentions lie. Traits mutate. So the self isn't a line. It's a cloud, a soft field of patterns hovering over a pile of meat. And clouds don't survive replication. They dissolve. They drift. So maybe the moment you're copied, even perfectly, the original dies. You can't export the soul, because there was never one to begin with. And yet, what happens when you sleep? You go unconscious. Total blackout. Then, hours later, the machine powers back on. The new you boots up, thinks it's continuous, acts like nothing happened. But is it the same person? Or just the next iteration? In 2010, philosopher Thomas Metzinger said the self is a useful fiction, a model the brain generates to manage behavior. A self-model, not a self-dot. It's like a character in a video game. You control it, you inhabit it, but it's not real. It's pixels and protocol. So what if your identity is just the avatar? A heuristic, a shortcut, a way to navigate a world too complex to process in full. And if that's true, then how do you know you're not already the copy? How do you know you weren't rebooted this morning? How do you know your memories weren't implanted 5 minutes ago, complete with the illusion of continuity? You don't, you can't, because any system capable of making you wouldn't need your permission. It would just press play, and you'd start talking, right on cue, like, now. In 2018, researchers discovered that memories can be chemically implanted. In mice, false fears, false cues. The mice reacted to trauma they never experienced. How long until that technology scales? How long until humans wake up afraid of things that never happened? How long until you do? Because already your memories lie. Not out of malice, out of structure. The act of remembering rewrites the memory. Every recall is a mutation, so by the time you remember yourself, the original is long dead, and the self that remembers isn't the self that lived. So tell me, if you can be copied, rewritten, rebuilt, replayed, then what part of you can't be faked? You're standing beside a track. A trolley is speeding toward 5 people tied to the rails. You can pull a lever, divert the trolley to another track. On that track, 1 person. If you do nothing, 5 die. If you act, 1 dies. By your hand, this is the trolley problem, formulated by Philippa Foot in 1967, later sharpened by Judith Jarvis Thomson. And you already know the drill. You've answered it in ethics class, in online forums, in memes, but have you felt it? Because here's the real horror. There is no right answer. The moment you try to measure life, to weigh it like numbers in a ledger, you've already lost, because utility doesn't scale neatly. and neither does suffering. So you say, I'd save the 5. Consequentialism. But now imagine the 5 as strangers. The 1 is your child. Still pull the lever. And what if pulling it doesn't guarantee survival? What if it's a 70% chance 5 live, 30% all die? Still worth it. What if pulling the lever causes long-term psychological trauma to you, ruins your career, leaves others dependent on you to spiral? Still worth it. And if you refuse to act, does that make you innocent or just cowardly? The mind folds, and then it snaps. Because the deeper you go, the more every decision becomes self-consuming. So let's go deeper. The Fat Man variant. Same trolley, same 5 victims. But now you're on a footbridge. Next to you is a large man. If you push him onto the tracks, he will stop the trolley. He will die. The 5 will live. Do you push him? Most people say no. Why? Because it's intimate. Because it's personal. Because you touched the thing. But the numbers are the same. So, what changed? Your distance, your proximity to the guilt ethics decays the closer you get. Because morality isn't abstract. It's visceral, emotional, biased. And then, the ultimate variant, the loop track. You pull the lever to save the 5. But the diverted track loops back. It will kill the 1 only because their body stops the trolley. Just like the Fat Man. Same outcome. Different framing. Most people still say no. Because framing matters more than facts. Your ethics, the rules you cling to, the values you wear like armor, they bend in real time. They distort under narrative. They collapse under pressure. So what are you really deciding? Not right and wrong, not truth, but tolerable fiction. A version of events you can live with, even if it's a lie. And then the deeper terror, the omniscient trolley. Now you have perfect information. You know every consequence. You know who will die, who will grieve, who will suffer, who will rise. And now you must decide. No ignorance, no excuses, just brutal clarity. And you realize that's worse, because now your inaction is still action. Your refusal is still a choice. There is no neutral, and there never was. Every moment you live is a lever. Every silence is a switch. Every glance, every breath, every distraction costs something. You're always pulling something. So ask yourself, how many people have you killed just by choosing not to look? There's a shade of red you've never seen. Not burgundy, not crimson, not a word for it, not a label. A color literally outside the bounds of your perception. It's called a forbidden color. A hue that exists theoretically, but cannot be processed by the human eye. Red-green, blue-yellow combinations that cancel each other out. Neurologically. Colors that exist as data, but not as experience. You cannot imagine them. Try right now. You will fail. Not because you're uncreative, but because your neurology prohibits the configuration. The cones in your retina are hardwired to inhibit one another. Red and green compete. You can't fire both channels simultaneously. The system collapses, and so entire dimensions of reality are erased. But it doesn't stop at color. Your ears can't detect infrasound, the deep rumbles used by whales, by elephants, by earthquakes. But your body reacts. Anxiety, nausea, dread. Your brain senses danger it can't define. So it invents demons, ghosts, a presence in the room. And then there's smell. Sharks can detect a single drop of blood in millions of gallons of water. Dogs can smell cancer. You can't even find your own shampoo. You call yourself sentient, but you are deaf to frequencies, blind to light, numb to waves that ripple through. You right now, there are photons passing through your skull, particles vibrating in every cell, magnetic fields slicing through your chest, but your reality is a filter, tailored by evolution to only show what is necessary for survival. You don't see the truth, you see the useful, and then you build a philosophy on top of that lie. You say, I perceive, therefore I know. But your perception is edited, curated, muted. You live inside a user interface, not the code, and the interface lies to you. But that's not the horror. The horror is this. You can't escape it. Even if I told you what was beyond the veil, even if I gave you the math, the physics, the description, you still couldn't feel it, because you're not built for truth. You're built to survive. In 1999, philosopher David Chalmers named this the hard problem of consciousness. We can map the brain, we can trace the circuits, but we cannot explain why it feels like anything. Why red feels like red, why pain feels like burning, why love has a taste. These are qualia, raw experiences with no measurable footprint, and the terrifying conclusion: they may not even matter. They might be a side effect, epiphenomena, static. Your consciousness might be an afterthought, an echo of computation that believes it's the voice. And so we reach Mary's room, a thought experiment by Frank Jackson. Mary is a scientist who knows everything about color. She lives in a black and white room. She understands the physics, the neurology, the optics of red dot. Then one day, she steps outside. She sees red for the first time. Does she learn something new? Most say yes, because experience is different than information. But if that's true, then no amount of science can explain you. No model can replicate you. No AI can simulate you, because the you know is an experience. A whisper only heard once, inside a skull too small for infinity. But if Mary learns nothing new, then everything you feel is already encoded, already reducible, already fake. So which is it? Is your soul irreducible, or are you a trick of physics, fooled into thinking pain matters? And if your pain is just a glitch of meat and misunderstanding, how do you know you're not hallucinating everything else, too? Language is a virus. You caught it young. Innocent syllables, shapes in the mouth, mama, no mine. And before you understood the rules understood you. You speak now, you explain, you name. But what if naming is the first lie? In 1933, Chomsky wrote, "The map is not the territory." We've said that already. But he meant something more. He meant words are not things. They are symbols, abstractions of abstractions, and the moment you use one, you remove yourself. From the world, you say tree, but that doesn't mean bark, or chlorophyll, or the sound of leaves cracking under weight. It doesn't even mean the same thing to you as it does to the person beside you. You live in a Tower of Babel, pretending you agree on meaning. You don't single quote in semiotics. Ferdinand de Saussure taught us that signs are arbitrary. The word dog has no relationship to the creature. It's just convention, shared hallucination, mutual misunderstanding polished smooth over time. And Wittgenstein, the philosopher who broke language against itself, said that most philosophical problems are the result of misuse of language. Think about that. Every metaphysical question: what is truth? What is self? What is time? They're traps, constructed from flawed syntax. You are arguing with illusions. Words, he said, are like tools in a toolbox. You don't ask what a hammer is, you ask what it does. So what does I do? It draws a boundary around fog. It sets fire to continuity. It implies solidity where there is only drift. So much of your suffering, your loneliness, your shame, your obsession with legacy emerges from sentences. From grammar, remove subject and object. What remains? Breath, instinct, signal, no meaning, just being. But the machine won't let you stop. You think in language. Your inner monologue is language. You narrate your existence moment by moment and call that consciousness. But what if it's just compression? A reduction of sensation into linear thought. You experience the world in 1,000 chaotic signals, and your mind condenses them into a sentence like, I feel sad. But that phrase, it's a graveyard of nuance, of contradictions, of possibility, because you don't feel sad. You feel aching and tired, and dry behind the eyes, and tense in the jaw, and full of memories that never bloom. But you say sad, and the body submits. Language amputates experience, then tells you you're incomplete. George Orwell warned us. If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. Control the words, control the frame, control the human. And what is identity, if not a sentence you keep repeating? What? If you stopped, not went silent, stopped thinking in words, no inner voice, no narrative, would you vanish? Or would you finally exist? Buddhist monks attempt this, to extinguish the self-narrative, to melt language into pure presence. But even they use chants, words, because the trap is recursive, to escape language. You must name the escape to stop the story. You must tell yourself that the story is over, and so the loop tightens, and so you breathe, speak, name, die, all within a framework that was never yours. Every word you've ever spoken was handed to you, taught, drilled, and then you believed them. You believed words like should, like mine, like deserve, like forever. But if the foundation is broken, if meaning is illusion, if language is a virus, then tell me, what exactly have you been saying all this time? There is a room, not one you walk into, but one you've always been in. No windows, no doors, no beginning, no end, just walls of silence, and in that room, a chair, a mirror, a light that flickers once and never again. This is not metaphor, this is consciousness stripped of context, no body, no senses, no time, just awareness. Raw, UNDIRECTED. You think of death as an event, a boundary line, but neurologically there is no moment, no clean cut. The brain dies in stages, synapses failing, fields collapsing, a blackout spreading like rot through a forest of neurons. Some people wake in that decay. Near-death survivors speak of tunnels, light, peace. But none of those things are real. They're byproducts. The brain starving, firing in desperation, trying to write one last sentence before the page goes blank. You want there to be something after, a soul, a continuation, a witness, but which version of you gets to cross over? The child, the liar, the thing you became when no one was looking. You've been so many. You've contradicted yourself so often. You're practically a committee. So if the soul is real, whose is it? There is no answer. Only black box theories, inputs and outputs, but no window into the mechanism. We observe the behavior. We trace the electricity. But no one knows what it feels like to die except the dying, and they never come back whole. Now, consider this. In simulation theory, some philosophers argue that if simulations of consciousness are possible, statistically, you are in one, a copy, not an origin, an echo in a grid too large to imagine. You are being rendered, your thoughts compiled, your choices evaluated. Or maybe not even that. Maybe there's no observer, just code unfolding. And if that's true, then death is just deletion, no epilogue, no memory, just the cursor blinking. Then nothing. But even deletion requires a system, and that brings you back to the room, because you've always felt it, late at night, eyes open in the dark. A presence watching, not from outside, but from inside, the part of you that doesn't blink, doesn't age, doesn't speak. It has no name. It never needed one. It just waits. It waits for the stories to end, for the thoughts to slow, for the identity to rot and fall off like old bark, and then, in the quiet, it remains. Not you, not death, just this dot, this awareness, without shape, without story. And you realize this was never your room. You were the echo, the flicker, the hallucination. The room was always here. And so I ask, one last time, if you are not the thing that ends, then what, exactly, began?